Hi guys, so today we're going to paint this black moor goldfish, so stay tuned. So I've already pre-drawn my design, but now I'm going to show you how I would draw it out using a charcoal pencil. And this is pretty much how I drew my original design when I did it in pencil. Like I said, I'm just going over it with a charcoal pencil just so you can see the design. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to see it on the black background. Now, I do provide a traceable for all of my rock tutorials. They are located over on Patreon. You do not need to be a paid supporter of Patreon for the traceables. Those are free to everyone. You may need to be a follower, which is free. I'm not 100% sure on that. But they are located over there, and you can just download those files if you're not comfortable freehanding this design. I also have the companion rock to this particular rock, which is a goldfish. It is a Patreon exclusive video. For all my Patreon supporters, you will have access to that video. That'll be out this week as well. Now, I would recommend doing your background first and then drawing out your design. I always have to do my background after I've drawn out the design, just because I need for y'all to know what we're working on. So I end up having to do it this way, which is much more difficult than painting the background first and then drawing in your design. But it can be done if you want to do it this way. It's just, I don't really recommend it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to paint the whole background. It looks kind of baby blue. It's actually an aqua, like a light aqua green color. And that's going to be it's going to be a gradated background. So it's going to go from this bright aqua green to a phthalo blue at the bottom. And it's going to be a smooth blended transition. Like I said, it's much more difficult to do this when you have to paint around your subject matter. And you see when I'm painting in my background, you see how I'm smoothing out those brush strokes? I put the paint down, and then you'll notice I go over it and I kind of feather my paintbrush lightly with just the tip of the bristles, and that's going to smooth out those brush strokes so that my background ends up very smooth. And I'm touching the background to see if it's wet. Once you put your layer on, you need to let it dry. Otherwise, if you keep painting over it, you're going to end up lifting the paint off the rock. So you have to let it dry and then go over with another coat. So now this is the phthalo blue, and I've thinned this down with a little bit of water. And this is going to help a little bit with starting my transition going up. Now, if I had done the background first, I would have just done a thick coat of paint at the bottom and a thick coat of paint at the top and worked those two towards the middle to create the blend. It would have been a whole lot easier that way. But since I'm having to work around my design, I'm going to use thinner coats, and it's going to take me longer. And it's going to take a lot more layers to get this part done. So now I'm pre-mixing colors adding a little white to the phthalo blue so that I can... my phone is talking to me. Sorry about that. In order to work towards the aqua green. I almost lost my train of thought there. And the easiest way to do this, like I said, is to keep your paints wet and using... Oh my gosh, this phone. Stop. I don't know why my phone keeps turning off. She thinks I'm talking to her. Okay, sorry. I don't even remember what I was saying. I think it was about blending the colors. You want your paints to be a little bit wet. So you want to thin them down slightly, not to a glaze, but just thin them down so that they flow smoothly. And again, I put the paint down and then I feather it out with just the tips of the bristles, and I just feather it to take the brush strokes out to get a smooth blend. Now the phthalo blue is very translucent, so you can paint kind of over your subject matter if you're doing it the way I am. You can kind of see where I've gone over his bottom fins. And it's not gonna hurt anything because you can still see the design below. Now if you do like I did over in the blue under the tail, I've lifted some of the paint. There's kind of a light blue spot there where I just touched. Just let the paint dry and then you can go over and you can fix spots like that. But it's really important to let the paint dry. That's what I did, and I overworked it, and when you start overworking it, that's when you start lifting paint. Now I painted this section thinking I had missed it, and it wasn't. That was a mistake. I should not have painted that, but I'll realize it here in a minute and put it back in. Excuse me. So this is a black fish, and the thing with painting a black subject, you never want to paint it black. So what I did was I mixed a little bit of white into black, and then once I had kind of this dark gray, I added a little bit of blue to it. Black and gray and white all make things look aged and dirty when you just use grays. So I like to add a little bit of blue or purple or something in it to change it from just a solid gray color. So the blue or purples and things like that will make it look more shiny. And these goldfish are kind of a metallic look, so having them look shiny is going to work in my favor. So I'm just, anytime I make up a gray, I add a little bit of blue to it. So see, I'm fixing, now that my background is dry, I'm going and trying to fix the area that I thought I had forgot, and then that area where I had lifted the paint. So I'm going in and just touching up my background. I haven't yet realized that I need to put, that's a back fin that I just covered up. It's the back side of the tail, or the other side of the tail. So it's a vital piece of the of the painting, and so I do figure it out here in a minute. And what I'm doing is I'm just blocking in the color. I'm just trying to cover up the background. I'm not worried about my brush strokes. I'm really not even really worried about the color. I do change the color just so that I don't lose my design. So I know where the gills are, where the round part of his belly is. I've used different kind of shades of gray just to differentiate those areas. But pretty much I'm just blocking in color. And I'm using a filbert. I don't know if I have that brush out here. Yeah, here it is. It is a Master's Touch, which is the Hobby Lobby brand, and it's a number 6 filbert. That's a brand new paintbrush, and I really like it. Most of the time I use round brushes, but I wanted to give this filbert brush a try. I used to paint only on canvases. Once I started painting rocks, I had to start buying much smaller paintbrushes. So I'm still kind of adding to my collection. So now I'm back to working on that background. And the thing is, you just keep adding layers until you get it blended out the way you're happy with. With acrylics, you never reach a point where you can't keep adding layers. Like if you work in color pencil, eventually you'll get to a point where you can't add any more layers of color. You don't get that with acrylics. That's one of the things that makes them enjoyable to work with. If you don't like the way something looks, you just paint over it and try again. And you only have to wait a couple minutes before you get to paint over it. Where oils, it may be a day to a month before you can, go back over and fix or adjust anything. And again, if you had painted this background first, it wouldn't be the headache that I'm kind of going through trying to get this all blended out nicely around this subject matter. So I'm still kind of working on just blocking in and defining the different areas of the fish. So now you'll see when I need to have a sharp line like around this fish's eye, I want it gray, but then I want it to be edged in a lighter blue. I will load my paintbrush with the dark gray, and then I will slide that paintbrush, the left edge of my paintbrush, just the left edge, I will slide it through the side of the paint. And that's going to load just a small bead of paint along the left edge. And then when I line it, you'll see it just deposits that little thin line of blue. Now, another thing I do a lot is, you saw I swiped that light gray paint on the belly area, and then I wiped off my paintbrush and I went back in and I smeared the bottom line of that paint that I had deposited. And that's a really easy way to blend the paint. So you put it on, you take it all off the paintbrush. The paintbrush is still damp, but it doesn't have paint on it. So when you go back and you hit that paint, it's going to allow you to blend out that bottom edge. You don't want to do it too much. You just want to hit it a couple of times, and it's going to blend it. The paint does have to be wet though. So you got to, if it's a thin layer of paint like mine was, you have to work kind of fast. So now I'm going in and I'm going to start defining some of the areas and adding the detail. And if you look at the original photo, which is down here in the right hand corner, the fish has some gold on its side and then a little bit of gold in the tail. Now, I'm not painting this to be 100% accurate. I just want it to look like this fish. So we're not painting in each individual rib in the fins. What we're going to do is just use our brush strokes to define the fins, or the ribs. So you see how I'm just stroking down, but I'm leaving gaps of gray in between my brush strokes. And some of my brush strokes are brighter, and some of them are a little thinner or a duller orange. So now I'm taking some black, this is actually very dark gray, and going back over the orange that I just did to help break it up even more, to help define those ribs. And doing the same thing to this top one. So now to do the scales, I just do random dots with my paintbrush. You don't want to do these in any kind of pattern. You need it to be very random. And it's going to give you the illusion of scales without us having to go in and paint each individual scale. You don't want the dots all the same size. Like I said, you don't want them in a distinct pattern. You just want it to be very random. You want some of them to be lighter, some of them to be brighter, and some of them to be darker. So you can see I'm going to go over, and now I'm doing the same thing with a dark gray. This is almost black, but not quite. And I'm taking this black and I'm dotting it in between some of the yellow that I just put down, or not yellow, sorry, orange that I just put down. Now I've realized that I'm missing that back fin, so paint that back in. I need to stay more focused, I think, sometimes. So now I just used black and just drew that in, or painted that in. I will go in and detail it out in a little bit. Oh, I guess I'm going to do that now. So see, I went over it pretty much all with a dark blue gray. We'll, let that dry. There is a bad glare from my lighting, so I have to kind of compete with that a little bit. But I decided to extend the belly, make it a little bit more round. It was looking a little flat on that back side, so I rounded it out. So now I'm taking some of the blue and dotting that in. That's towards that back side of the belly. It's going to be a little bit, I have to tilt the rock up so that I don't have a glare to fight with. It also takes the glare off for you guys too. I just have to darken the base of the fin. And then I'm cleaning up the outer edge. But I don't want just a solid line, so I'm pulling some of that same color back into the fin. You see, that's going to create a distinct look, a distinct line. So to break that up, we pull lines into the fins, and that's going to break up that line so it doesn't look like it's outlined. Now I'm going in, and you see how I'm dotting and pulling in some of these lighter gray. I'm going to end up going over that with a glaze of blue, so it's not going to stay quite that bright gray. But again, this is just helping define the ribs of the fins and that edge of the fin itself. And again, you see I'm dotting along the fin now, and I'm not drawing a straight line anymore. I just did that originally with the black to clean up the line, but now I'm trying to define the edge, and I do that by making dots and little dashes in just a very random pattern. And I'm brightening up some of, not all of them, but some of the dashes and dots along there. I brightened them up a little bit. But I'm going to glaze blue over all of this. And here's where I'm glazing the blue. So to make a glaze, I take this was the phthalo blue, just straight phthalo blue, and I add water to it, and I thin the mixture down to about a milk-like consistency. And then it's very translucent, so you glaze that color over, and you see how now it's got a much deeper blue than a gray color to it. So I'm kind of going over everywhere I put gray, I'm glazing the blue over it. So now I'm taking a nail dotting tool, and this is just to put the black in the eye. So it'll be instead of having to paint in a circle, it's just easier to use a dotting tool. Or you can use a toothpick or a dried up pen, a ballpoint pen that doesn't work anymore. You could use that. There was a paintbrush bristle stuck to my rock, so I had to dig that out, and then I just ended up glazing over where it stuck and pulled the paint off. So now I'm hitting this with just some brighter streaks of orange and just random spots, not too heavily. So now I'm taking this is straight Mars black, and I'm making the bubbles. And you do this by, you make an upside down smiley face or a frown, and then you blend that. So when you draw that line of paint, you're just going to blend down the bottom edge of that line of paint. And I make different size bubbles, and then I make some that are just dots of black. And then you take titanium white, and then you do, well, since mine's on a turntable and I can turn my rock upside down, it would be another frown. It's just easier to work that way than to work up. It's easier to work down, if that makes any sense. So when I have just a dot of black, I just put a smaller dot of white on it. You don't have to do any kind of blending on these little bitty ones. But you're going to do the same thing with the white. And then you're going to take and put a strip, just a small strip of pure white along the black, just below the top edge of the bubble. And I'm just taking my paintbrush and cleaning up where I'd gotten kind of out of the circle. So now I'm taking my dotting tool, and there's where I'm adding the white at the top and then a white dot at the bottom also. And then if you feel like if you can't see your background color through your bubble, you can glaze that color on. Again, to make the glaze, you just thin it down with water until it's like a milk-like consistency. And then just kind of in the very center of the bubble, you can glaze, like the blue in my background, I would just glaze that into the center of the bubble. That way it'll make it look like that bubble is see-through. These bubbles are so small, sometimes they're kind of hard to work with. If you were working on a big canvas and you were making bubbles, the bubbles would be a lot bigger and they'd be actually a lot easier to do. Sometimes painting on this small of a scale is actually more difficult than painting on a large painting. I always feel like the larger the painting, the easier it is. And now I'm signing my artwork. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit like and subscribe and share this with any of your friends who would be interested in seeing how this rock was painted. And thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next video. I want to give a shout out to my Patreon Silver supporters: Angela, Shannon, Jason, Linda, Bonnie, Kelly, Becky, Christina, Abby, Lenora, April, Rachel, Monique, Lindell, and Carol. And for my gold level supporters: Jacqueline, Katie, Karen, Susan, Beth, Paula, and Danny. I want to thank you guys so much for your support. Without you, none of this would be possible. You guys rock. If you'd like to become a supporter on Patreon, the link is listed below in the description, and it's only $4 a month to get started, and you have access to all of my Patreon exclusive videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.